So this week we are going to be playing a mono white deck, which I consider to be the weakest of the mono colors. So this deck was definitely a challenge to do. It's probably one of the harder deck builds that I've actually had to do, just because it's really hard to try to find some of the key things for mono white. But let's jump right into it. So this week's commander is Odric, Lunarch Marshall. So 3 and a white for a legendary creature, human soldier, 3/3. At the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. Same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. So this commander cares about keywords, and the key thing here with the commander is it says each combat. So he doesn't care if it's our combat, if it's our opponent's combat. Each combat, all of our creatures are going to get whatever keywords are out there that are attached to our creatures. So that is the commander. That's what he cares about. That's what he's doing. So we have a lot of creatures in this deck that have keywords. We have equipment in this deck that has keywords, and that's basically what we're going to try to do in this deck, is try to give as many keywords as we can to our creatures, and then all of our creatures have those keywords. So real quickly, just some stats with the deck. So of course it's mono white. So our ramp is mostly artifact. We do have some creatures like Burnished Heart in the deck, which is pay 3, sack them, go get 2 basic land cards. Solemn, which of course hits the battlefield, gets us a land. The nice thing about Solemn compared to Burnished Heart is, like, Burnished Heart we have to sack him to go get the land, so we no longer have that creature. Solemn, we get the land when it enters, so we still get to have him. So on combat, he gets all the keywords that all the other creatures have. So all of a sudden Solemn becomes better. So that's pretty neat. And then of course, again, we have our artifact ramp, so Soul Ring. We have a Marble Diamond, which was nice to get in Commander Legends. So comes in as a 2-mana rock, and then it does come into play tapped. But of course, if you're playing this on turn 2, unless you have a 1-mana thing to use this with, it's okay to come in tapped. And then it taps for white too, which is really nice. So I think the 2 best ways we have to get mana ramp in this is obviously Smothering Tithe. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token, sack this artifact to add 1 mana of any color. Just a really good ramp spell in white, because most of the time the opponents, because it's 2 mana they have to pay, especially early on in the game, they're not going to be paying it, which is going to give you a treasure, which is going to ramp you. So the other one I think is really good is Nyx Lotus. So it's 4 mana, Nyx Lotus enters the battlefield tapped, but you get to tap it, choose a color, which in this case we're obviously choosing white. Add an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion to that color. So devotion, of course, is it cares about the white pips in the card. So as you can see, we have a lot of white pips in all of these cards. So Nyx Lotus has the potential to get us a lot of mana. As far as card draw, I believe we had like 7 or 8 card draw spells. With the lands that I put in here, we have a couple lands that you can draw a card with that should get us to like 10 ways to get card draw. So like War Room, which is a new one from Commander Legends. You can tap 3, tap this card, pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity, which is of course going to be 1 because we're playing mono white, and then you draw a card. Couple of the ways I found which were interesting to get card draw: Endless Atlas, which I had totally forgotten about. Pay 2, tap it, draw a card, activate this ability only if you control 3 or more lands with the same name. Which of course, mono white, we have a lot of plains, so it's pretty easy to get there. Creature wise, I thought Mangara was a really good card draw. So whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you or a planeswalker you control, you draw a card. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, draw a card. So this is a pretty good mono-white way of drawing cards. And then I thought a really unique way, because we're playing around with keywords and a lot of our creatures are going to have lifelink, I thought Will of Lost Streams was going to be a really good card. So whenever you gain life, you may pay X where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gained. If you do, draw X cards. So say we even just gain 1 life. Oh, cool, we tap 1 mana. Now we just drew a card. So, really good. It is a little situational with the deck because we're not playing, like, our commander doesn't have lifelink on it, so it is situational, but I think we can get there because a lot of our creatures have keywords, and we do have some artifacts in the deck that are also going to give us that keyword of lifelink, so I think we're going to be okay. Again, really hard mono white to try to get card draw. You can't really be too picky with it, so but I think those pieces should help us to get there. Removal is where I was a little on in this deck. So building the deck, of course, like I said, this was one of the more challenging decks. I think we only have 4 or 5 actual pieces of removal. I tend to like to have 8 to 10 pieces of removal. So 4 or 5 was really like pushing the button for me. Like, I was really comfortable, but I really tried to lean more towards having a lot of creatures in the deck, less towards removal. So, I mean, it is what it is in the end. Our best removal is, of course, the instant. So we have, like, Generous Gift, which is going to be destroying a target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 elephant. Path to Exile, which is just a 1 mana exile target creature. So we are playing the best removal, which is Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshares, which is just tap 1 mana and exile a creature. I thought Heliod's Intervention is just a card I'm playing in more decks that have white, just because it's X, white, white, and then you destroy X target artifacts or enchantments. So you can easily just look around, say, okay, well, there's like 3 artifacts or enchantments that really need to just go, and then just tap for 5, and then cast this and destroy them. And then it also has the second ability, which is really nice, of just target player gains twice X life. So, I mean, if you're about to lose the game or whatever, all of a sudden this becomes a I'm going to save myself type card. So, really like Heliod's Intervention. And I think that's it, really, for our removal. So we got like 2 creature removals, a target permanent removal, and then we have our artifact or enchantment removal, and that's it. So really kind of iffy on that. If I could change this deck in one way, it'd probably be put in more removal, but I don't really know what we would be taking out. So yeah, that's the only difference I would really make with this deck. Board wipes, we're running the pretty easy ones. Wrath of God, which is just probably the best board wipe in white. I really like Winds of Abandon because it's a 6 mana wipe all of our opponent's boards. They do get lands, but typically when you play this card and you're wiping everybody's board except yours, you have all your creatures still left. So you're going to probably swing for the win at that point, hopefully. Shatter the Sky, which is like a Wrath of God, 4 mana. It is going to allow everybody to draw a card if they have a power 4 greater creature, but you're not really concerned at that point because you're wiping their boards. So, and then Fumigate is just a really good card because you're going to gain 1 life, which in this deck we do have some cards that care about life gain. So Fumigate is pretty good in that aspect. So. And then we do have a couple protections. Teferi's Protection, of course, which I think is the best protection spell out there, which is just 3 mana until your next turn. Your life total can't change, and you have protection from everything, and then all permanents you control phase out. So basically, you cast a spell, you don't exist until your turn. Which is pretty much just you save yourself from anything that might happen. And then one of the ones that I was a little iffy on was a Chroma's Will, which is a new card from Commander Legends, which is actually why I put this in here. I originally had the protection spell that gives all your creatures indestructible, and then if you have your commander out, you can cast it for free. I put a Chroma's Will in here just because it is a Commander Legends card. I wanted to just show it off a little bit. Plus, I mean, it cares about keywords too, so it's not like a bad inclusion. I think if I was doing this deck differently, I would include the one that costs 0 if you have your commander out, just because it is an overall better card, especially in the protection category. But I like a Chroma's Will. We're going to play it. So Chroma's Will is 4 mana. Choose one. If you control a commander, as you cast the spell, you may choose both. Creatures you control gain Flying, Vigilance, Double Strike until end of turn. Creatures you control gain Lifelink, Indestructible, Protection from all colors until end of turn. So it's really flavorful in this deck because we care about keywords, and then it can also protect our creatures because it has Indestructible, and then it gives it protection from all colors. So really good. That's the protection. Yeah, so that's basically the stats of the deck. So our win cons, we have 1 sorcery that can just win us the game, really. So Finale of Glory, it's an X white spell. Create X 2/2 white soldier creature tokens with vigilance. If X is 10 or more, also create X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. And of course, because we're playing keywords, we have ways to give our creatures haste. All of a sudden, these creatures, of course, can get pumped because we have some pump spells. These creatures can get vigilance. They can get first strike, double strike, trample. I mean, list goes on and on. But I mean, we have the opportunity to give them haste, so we just play this card. They all have haste, and then we just kill everybody. So this is definitely one of our nice win cons. And then because we are playing in Lifelink, another win con is Felidar Sovereign. So it is 6 mana for a cat beast to 4/6. It has Vigilance, Lifelink, but the key part here is at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game. This card obviously is just, you play it and it immediately is going to get destroyed. So, I mean, I'm not really expecting to win with this card. Mostly I like it because it has the keywords Vigilance and Lifelink in it, which is going to help pump our team on our combat, so which is nice. But, I mean, we could win with it. I mean, there could be an instance with nobody has a removal spell, and we get back to our turn, and boom, we win the game. So, there is that possibility with it. And then basically how we win with this deck, we have some token producers, we have ways of making tokens, and we have a bunch of creatures in this deck, like a Chroma Angel of Wrath, which is going to give all our creatures flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste. We have Zatalpa, which is going to give all our creatures flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, indestructible. So we just have a bunch of cards in this deck that are going to give all of our creatures a lot of keywords, and we're going to use those keywords along with our pump spells like Cathar's Crusade, which is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So with the ways we're making tokens, with just our creatures entering the battlefield, they're going to get bigger with this card. So we're going to have big creatures with keywords, and then we're going to be able to swing for a lot of damage. Dictate of Heliod is a spell that can just come out of nowhere because it has Flash. So Flash, creatures you control get +2/+2. It's just another way of pumping our board. So that's basically our key strategy for this deck. You know, if our other two win cons, we don't draw them, or they just get removed or whatever, or countered, is creating a big board, giving our big board a lot of keywords, and then just swinging in and winning the game that way. So that's going to be how we're most of the time going to win with this deck. And yeah, so just a few of my favorite cards in this deck that I just wanted to point out. Again, I already went over Cathar's Crusade. I love tokens. Tokens is like my thing. It's my number one go-to whenever I want to build a deck. Just on my own, I love just tokens. So Cathar's Crusade, again, whenever a creature enters battlefield control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So with this out and Finale of Glory, basically each of those tokens, just say it's 10. So you create 10 2/2s and 10 4/4s. Because they're all coming to the battlefield at the same time, they're each going to get 20 counters on them. So all of a sudden, instead of having a 4/4 white angel, you have a 24/24 white angel. And then again, if they all have haste, you win the game. So unless somebody has an instant speed board wipe or something, you're winning the game. So I really like Cathar's Crusade. It's very powerful. It's very strong. It's just one of my favorite cards. I really like it. It's going to do a lot of damage when it hits the battlefield. Another one I really like is Avacyn, Angel of Hope. There's a reason why this card is really expensive. Flying and Vigilance, but then Avacyn, Angel of Hope, and other permanents you control are indestructible. So not only is this indestructible, but all of a sudden our entire board is indestructible. Our lands are indestructible, our enchantments, our artifacts, the creatures, they're just indestructible. It doesn't matter if we're moving to combat and all of our creatures get it, everything's indestructible. So really, unless our opponents have exiles or ways to exile Avacyn, we're just going to always keep our board. So which will work really well with Felidar Sovereign, because all of a sudden it becomes that much harder to remove it. So I really like Avacyn. It's very powerful. It is an 8 mana spell, so I mean, for 8 mana you better be having a powerful spell. A couple other ones I thought were really good, especially with this deck. Crystalline Giant I thought was really good. It's 3 mana for an artifact creature giant, so it's not white. But at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose a kind of counter at random that Crystalline Giant doesn't have on it, from among Flying, First Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, Vigilance, and +1/+1. Put a counter of that kind on Crystalline Giant. So this works really well with our commander because we're going to go to combat and we can stack the triggers to where it's like, okay, we're going to have the Crystalline Giant get his trigger first, and then our commander is going to go off because they're both at beginning of combat triggers. So beginning of combat, we choose at random, let's just say Hexproof. So it gets Hexproof, and then all of our creatures at that point get Hexproof. And then it sticks around for another turn. All of a sudden it gets Death Touch, and then so it just keeps adding on. It's really good in this deck because it's just going to keep getting keywords the longer it stays on the battlefield. So, and then lastly, I thought Oketra's Monument was pretty good. 3 mana legendary artifact, white creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, but whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. So with our commander, we have 31 creatures in this deck, so just any creature we cast is also just going to create a white warrior, and those warriors have vigilance. So we're almost guaranteed to just always have vigilance with this out, because we cast a creature, we get a 1/1 white warrior with vigilance, all of a sudden our whole board has vigilance. So with this card out, we're just never really going to get attacked into, just because we're always going to have vigilance. We're always going to have creatures untapped. So really nice card. I really like it with this deck. So that's basically the deck. Really quick, I just wanted to highlight some Commander Legends inclusions, because I tried to go more of the Commander Legends route with this. So Court of Grace is a new card with Commander Legends. When it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. I love the Monarch. Monarch just makes games fun, because it creates all of a sudden just this interaction with the table where everyone's trying to get Monarch. So everyone's getting attacked, everyone's doing things. It's really fun. Plus, it's a way for us on our turn to draw a card, which in mono white, you want to have cards that draw. And Court of Grace can draw us a card, because we play this, we get Monarch, we end the turn, we draw a card. Also, though, at the beginning of our upkeep, we create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. If you're the Monarch, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying instead. So for this card, we don't actually necessarily care. I mean, it'll be nice if our upkeep, if we still have the Monarch, but we're still going to create a spirit creature token, and it's going to have flying. So we're almost guaranteed on each of our turns with this out that we're going to have a creature with flying, which is then, with our commander, going to give all of our creatures flying. It's kind of the way with Oketra's Monument, where we cast a creature, we get something with vigilance. This card just being out is going to give all of our creatures flying, which is really good. So again, we don't necessarily care that we have the Monarch. It'd be nice to have a bigger creature, but with all the pump spells that we have, I mean, it's not mandatory that we have the Monarch. So I thought this was a really good deck for this card. On Sarah's Wings is another one. It's a legendary enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchant creature is legendary. It's +1/+1, has flying, vigilance, and lifelink. So it's just an aura. It does a lot of cool things. The legendary part I thought was interesting on this card, because I'd never really seen that before on a card, where it says enchanted creature is legendary, but it gets flying, vigilance, and lifelink. All of our creatures have flying, vigilance, and lifelink. Awesome. Another one I thought was really awesome was Promise of Tomorrow. I'm going to try to pull this off in our games that we play on Wednesday, but it's 3 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature you control dies, exile it. At the beginning of each end step, if you control no creatures, sacrifice Promise of Tomorrow and return all cards exiled with it to the battlefield under your control. So a really cool thing with this is, I mean, I'm just going to point it out. We have no way of actually doing this in the deck, I don't think, but this would be really cool. But it says whenever a creature you control dies. So it doesn't necessarily say own. So if you could somehow fit this into a deck that likes to steal creatures from your opponent, you could steal the creatures, find some way to like sack them, and then they get exiled under Promise of Tomorrow, and then if Promise of Tomorrow leaves, then you just get them on your battlefield again. So really cool. But for this deck, basically what we want to do is if we just have a big board of creatures and all of our opponents have big boards and we just want to like wipe the board, we can just Wrath of God, all the creatures die, and then at the end of our turn, because we have no creatures, all of our creatures come back. So then this way, this can actually kind of be a protection spell too, because yeah, our creatures are going to die, And if for some reason, like before our end step, somebody removes Promise of Tomorrow, all of a sudden all of our creatures are exiled. I mean, we only have one other spell in this deck, or we have 2 spells, I think, that gets things back from our graveyard, which is Sun Titan, which is whenever he enters battlefield or attacks, you can return target permanent card with mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. That does care about converted mana cost, so we can't get like our big things back. The other one is Amaria Shepherd. So whenever a land enters the battlefield in your control, you may return target non-land permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. If that land is a plains, which we have a lot of plains in this deck, so it's most likely going to be a plains, you can return that non-land permanent card to the battlefield instead. So that's a really good card. We play a plains, we get back whatever we want basically from our graveyard, as long as it's a non-land permanent. So yeah, Promise of Tomorrow I think is pretty solid. I think it's just a fun card. Go to wipe the board, and then all of our board comes back. I think it could be really good. I wanted to try it out. I thought this deck would be a pretty good place for it, so we're going to try it, see what happens. I think it's going to be fun. And then, let me see, I don't know. Of course, we're playing Vidalcan Ori, because I said I would put in each deck, so you may play 9-line cards anytime you would play an instant. And yeah, so again, we have equipment, like Shadow Spear gives our creature trample and lifelink, which then gives all of our creatures trample and lifelink. Swiftfoot Boots gives them hexproof and haste, so all of our creatures have hexproof and haste. Haunted Cloak is really good. Creature gets vigilance, trample, and haste, so then all of our creatures have vigilance, trample, and haste on combat. And then Gorgon's Head, a creature has death touch. All of our creatures on combat have death touch, so really, really good. But yeah, guys, so that is basically the deck. I'm going to post in the description the link to the deck so you can come check it out. And yeah, so again, that's the deck. Wednesday is when we're going to be testing this deck out against other decks. So we'll go up against Kenny, Josiah, and Bryce again. If you've been watching those, Wednesday about 6:30 is when we get started. So yeah, tune in for that. Otherwise, you guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you next Saturday for another new random deck tech, and Wednesday for the Commander Randomonium game. So see you guys then.